Phil Lindemann, Krystal 93 News Director, on the phone today with Chris Willard. He's former artistic director, longtime artistic director for Breckenridge Backstage Theatre. And Chris, I wanted to thank you for getting on the phone today, but also wanted to just talk with you a little bit about your tenure there and your time in the artistic community here in Breckenridge, because it's also part of the story that's happening that a lot of people are reading right now that they might not realize is that if they haven't been following Backstage, you've been around for a long time. So tell me a little bit
about... I've been here forever, Phil. Forever, yes. Well, 13 years.
Well, and that's where I wanted to start, was tell me a little bit about your background with Backstage Theater, and then just also, Breckenridge performance in general.
Okay. Well, 13 years ago, I came up from the Front Range. I was working at the Arvada Center for the Arts and Humanities. I've been there for close to 10 years. And was looking for new challenges, and boy, did I get them. Be careful what you ask for. So I came up here and found out very early on that this position did everything, essentially. I was the executive director as well as the artistic director, technical director, education coordinator, stage manager, volunteer coordinator. It was an all-encompassing job. I was the only full-time employee. There was a part-time business manager at the time. And it was quite a challenge to just get into the groove of the job itself and kind of figure out what the community was all about and what they needed. The previous artistic director had been running the theater like it was a small off-Broadway house with titles that most people wouldn't recognize. And we realized that we needed to take the programming and move it more center so that people could actually come and see Nonsense or Sylvia or Joseph the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, some shows that they might know, and so that we can build our audiences back up.
Definitely.
And about 3 years in, I realized that I had fallen in love with the place, and I said, well, Breckenridge, I guess we're married now. And it's been a lovely relationship and a lot of fun to work with the people in the community and to challenge the people in the community and challenge ourselves as artists and program year after year some really great shows and realize them.
Yeah, absolutely. And what year did you first? What was your first year at Breck Backstage?
So 2013 years, let's do the math here. So 2006.
2006, great. And you came from Arvada Center. Actually, that's right down the street. I grew up in Arvada, right down the street from where I grew up. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, well, I was there for 9 years.
Okay, so you're there for a long time too, then. And what brought you?
I have a problem with longevity, Phil, in my employment.
Well,
it's hard to get rid of me.
Well, I feel like when in the role of an artistic director, what have you found that some kind of consistent vision is better, or do you like it when people are shaking it up all the time?
Well, keep in mind where we are. We're in Breckenridge, Colorado, and so most of the time we're dealing with we're putting on shows that not only appeal to the locals, but we're looking at the tourist market as well. So we're thinking about the people when they get off the mountain at 4 o'clock, and if they don't want to go back to the bars again, they want to come and see something that won't necessarily challenge them too much, won't be too heavy and dramatic. And so the types of shows that you have to create have to fall within the realm of who's going to come and see these shows. But at the same time, I had a lot of fun programming shows like Cannibal the Musical or Reefer Madness or the Toxic Avenger, shows that really appeal to the locals and a younger group to come and see that type of fare. And I think those titles, I think, resonate with Breckenridge and are kind of what Breckenridge is, a little rough and tumble, a little rough around the edges, and like to get shocked every now and then. We did Avenue Q and those types of shows, which are a lot of fun to be able to present.
Yeah, and I'm not going to lie, when I was thinking about heading over to the Backstage for a show, that was usually the sort of ones that I was thinking of, was that somebody might mention, oh, did you see Toxic Avengers there, or the 80s musical? Now, did you have a hand in that as well? Yeah.
I did. The guys approached me about 3 years ago with the idea, and they had been actors who had worked in Cannibal and Avenue Q, and they just loved Breckenridge and loved the vibe, and they had this perfect idea, and I don't even think they got halfway through telling me what the concept was. I said, go and write. And then I started working with them about a year ago to develop the material and get it into some shape that we could actually present it.
Okay, great. And that brings me to my next question. So, as your role developed over time, like you said, when you first came in, you were doing a little bit of everything. What were you still doing, right up until the end, right up until the time that you resigned? Were you still kind of a little bit of everything, or was it more big picture, artistic director, what we think of when we think of a artistic director?
No, it's still pretty yeoman, and I wear a lot of hats. The executive director position had been established 6 years prior, so that was a full-time position, but I still end up being technical director, and I stage manage up to a point until we're ready to go into production itself, and then I still education coordinate and hire the instructors for the kids program, and it's always an other duties as assigned kind of job, and but that's also been pretty exciting. I don't mind the hard work as long as the hard work is fun.
Absolutely. And it seems like that's just kind of what makes for the best performance in general, is when everybody wears a little bit of everything and does a little bit of everything. And just my own personal background, talking with performers and musicians, that's kind of how it works. You got to...
Well, they all have a stake in it, and that helps. They have ownership in what they're creating, and that makes them work even harder and bring even more passion to the table to realize the product.
Absolutely.
So I don't think you can do that any other way. Otherwise, it's just a turnkey job, and nobody wants to do that.
No, and nobody wants to watch that or pay for that.
Nobody wants to watch that. I've seen too many productions like that. They're just phoning it in.
True.
And I'm talking about Broadway shows, by the way.
the stuff that they should be caring about a little bit more.
Yeah, that's right. They're just cashing the paycheck.
Great. Well, now... Getting into the next side of things, I wanted to start with this. What kind of organization did you join when you joined Backstage? So thinking back on it, what was the organizational mindset there? What was the culture like?
So 13 years ago, what it was like, we were still, even though at that point we were something like 35 years old, 36 years old, and I'm not quite up to 35 yet. The organization had gone through a little bit of turmoil. Prior to my coming on staff, the artistic director had been there for 2 years, I think, 2 or 3 years. And during that time, they had lost their primary space, which was over at Maggie Pond, over by that area. And they were nomadic for several years. And that artistic director really helped to keep the theater alive. And they did shows everywhere. They did it over in Dillon, they did them in bed and breakfasts, they did them in the high school, and then when I took the reins, it was really about bringing everybody back to the table and building our donor base again, and we did that with a lot of love and passion and a bit of craziness, because you have to have that in the mix. With the board and with the people that were helping on the sidelines, the volunteers and that part-time staff person. And it was a struggle, but it was a worthwhile struggle, and we got ourselves back up on our feet in relatively quick time, and then started to really grow the organization and figure out what it was we wanted to do. And we did it all as a team together, sharing the highs and the lows. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and looking back on it, it seems like over time, the theater definitely got some support and started to grow. I mean, by now, you guys have a full-time year-round home. You guys have a theater.
Yep. And we had so Seamus O'Toole's Roadhouse, when Seamus decided he was going to head out to Florida, he sold the building to the town, and the town purchased it and turned it into a multi-use space. That they actually had bleachers that were supposed to tear down so that people could have dances in there, and then they could put the bleachers back up again. But as soon as they put the bleachers up the very first time, they turned to each other and said, "We are not tearing those things down. We're not doing this." And then that was our home. We were the resident tenant there for the longest time until about 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, when we proposed a business model to the town of Breckenridge to upgrade everything. We were feeling the growing pains, so we wanted to stretch out a little bit and provide a nicer experience for our patrons and for our performers. And so then the town committed $3 million to a remodel project, and they decided to just modify the existing building. And we built out to the south, but we kept the basic structure, and we We expanded our lobby area. We were able to give more flexibility for our performers as well, and got more backstage space, and so and that allowed us to do bigger and better shows.
Yeah.
We had been kind of limited by what we could do in our space.
Very true, and it really does make for a venue that is welcoming and inviting and modern, and it just feels like a great place to be. Now, the flip side of that, I am wondering sometimes though, did the new facility and the fact that millions of dollars were committed to this put the pressure on the theater, put the pressure on the people making decisions about what to show, what to run, where to get money, all that good stuff?
I don't feel like the pressure really started until this last year programmatically in terms of what we chose. I mean, I've always been conventional in what I've decided to put on the calendar. We don't do Beckett plays, and we don't do a lot of Arthur Miller. Even though I love both of those writers. We want to think about what our audiences want to see. We want to have fun too, but we also want to make sure we're putting some meat on the bones. But with any new venue comes more responsibility. I'm trying not to quote Spider-Man here, but
it sounded like it was that way.
Hey, I was getting really damn close. It's just that when you have a more state-of-the-art facility, then there's more onus on you to sort of live up to a larger potential for the audience. But then there's the reality of, well, you need to hire a sound designer who can deal with this digital system. And now we have LED lighting, so you've got to find lighting designers who are just not comfortable doing analog, but they can do this as well and program DMX. And then we need more staff, and we need this, blah, 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 blah. So it just gets a little bit bigger, and it gets a little bit more important to focus on the egg, the nut of what you need to raise in order to be able to, in terms of ticket sales as well as donor contributions, in order to cover your programming and get through a season.
And it seems like you said, with hiring new staff, of course, that means that the pressure's on to make more money so that you can keep on providing that level of performance that people want. Because I guess it would be uncouth to go ahead and have one season worth of stage manager and lighting and sound, and then the next season it's all gone.
Yeah, that would be uncouth. That would be uncool.
Very true.
Yeah,
very true.
That would be really so. And that's what we've always done. Is we've always grown incrementally. We've been very careful about the size of the growth, but we've been doing that. We've been growing. But there are growing pains that come with that.
Absolutely. And that brings me to the next piece was the last 6 months to year. Like you said, you didn't really feel the pressure starting to mount for programming until the last year or so. And then within the past 6 months, there's been all sorts of dust-ups. I think it was something like 3 executive directors in the past year or two, and then your own...
And a reservations manager as well.
And a reservations manager, so that
would be 5 staff members, counting myself.
5 staff members total in a single year. What was happening, or what kind of organization did you end up eventually leaving compared to the organization you entered?
Was I leading the organization, Phil? What I'll say, and I feel comfortable revealing, because I think just that statement alone, that in the last year, the Backstage has gone through 5 staff members, is that the current leadership has been off balance for a little over a year now. And this recent controversy about censorship, it's just systematic of the problems that they have with supporting art and artists. And that's not a good thing to say about any arts organization. So what I would leave it at this, that it's just not a good place to be right now, not for creative artists. I would like to have stayed, but I couldn't live with myself if I had.
Okay, really, it got to the point where your commitment to the art and the production was just outweighed by, or that was the thing that made you leave.
I tell you what, I got through the end of my term. I saw the season all the way through. I opened my final show. When I came on board 13 years ago, the previous artistic director left before he was finished, and I finished up his program. I wasn't going to do that to the community nor to the next person that would follow me. But if you don't feel supported, then you better get out of there.
Very true, and I think that's one of those things that goes for any job, not just an artistic job, but any job.
Yeah, right.
Now, was the decision an easy one? How much did you wrestle with this?
Quite a bit. But in the end, like I said, I wanted to be able to live with myself and wake up and look at myself in the mirror and be willing to spend another day in this body. So that was it.
Okay, and of course, over time, tell us a little bit, or tell me a little bit about how many productions were you a part of in those 13 years?
Well, I produced every show, and so I think that's close to 130. I haven't really done an actual head count on that. I think I directed about 70 shows, and I believe I acted in 30 shows, somewhere around there.
All right. And now moving forward, what are your wishes, I guess, your hopes for the Backstage Theater? Or are you just going to wash your hands of the whole organization?
Well, that was one of the things I wrestled with quite a bit, too, in the decision behind my departure was what I would be leaving and what would happen to the dream that Alan Mosier started back in 1974. And so I spent a lot of time with Alan and his wife Joyce, who still live here in the county, and just talked through the decision. And I felt like there was no other option for me to take but to go ahead and remove myself from a toxic situation. Well, I would like to see the theater continue. I established a lot of programming in the 13 years that I was here, children's theater programming that I would like to see continue. It's still a nice place for people to go and see shows, but I know that they're going to have some really real hard growing pains this go round to try to get their ship righted and earn the trust of the community back again. And that's not my responsibility. It'll fall on them. But I definitely want to see this 45-year-old, it'll be 45 this year, institution continue. I would just hope that it keeps its eye on the community, and hopefully the board will begin to reflect the community, because until that can happen, then the theater won't be able to really serve the community the way it needs to.
Yeah, and it's been interesting seeing, like you said, some of the community input and backlash and just all sides of it coming from folks who are very committed to the Backstage Theater, weighing in on, obviously the letter to editor page and the Summit Daily, but also just hearing it around town. I have a handful of friends who have acted in Backstage Theater, and it's like Abby Austin. She's a friend of mine. Yeah, and it's interesting to hear their take on it too. It seems like it's left a lot of people in limbo, at least the people who I've spoken to. I can't, speak for the board because I reached out to them and they did not get back to me. But
no comment.
Yeah, and that's my final question for you. Was like looking at the organization you came into and the organization you left. What is the impact that you think Backstage Theater has had on Breckenridge?
Well, this last year notwithstanding, I believe that it's been an overall quite a positive impact. If I'm to believe the people that have spoken to me and reached out to me and have spoken in my name. I not just in the 13 years that I've been here, but in all the years that came before. We were the first nonprofit here in the county. We're still one of the oldest long-running theaters on the Western Slope. We gave birth to some of the other NPOs that are still functioning today. The Breckenridge Music Festival is one of those examples. We were the only game in town for the longest time, and gave locals as well as visitors opportunities to explore the performing arts. And that's still at the core of our mission, and hopefully it will remain there, that we remain, despite our being a professional theater, that we still include the community in everything that we do and make sure we have productions that feature them as well. We always do the big Labor Day show at the Riverwalk, and that's
absolutely
called the community-wide musical. But we find other opportunities throughout the year to incorporate the community as well. So I think that's a great legacy to point to, and to see that we're still vibrant and was still important in the minds and hearts of the people of the community. And I just hope it stays that way, and calmer heads prevail, and they keep it focused on the community.
Yeah. Now, will you personally be sticking around Breckenridge, or is it off to the next theater?
It's off to something. I don't know what that is. Sleep. That's next. I'd like to rest a little bit, for sure, but I will probably be leaving Breckenridge.
Okay. Chris, well, it has been great having you in town and great seeing the Backstage Theater grow and progress as you've been there. And, of course, hoping for, like you said yourself, all the best for the theater in the future and that it continues on growing.
Great.
Chris,
well, thanks, Phil. I appreciate that.
Well, and I thank you very much for making time to talk real quick. And, of course, stay in touch, and we'll be following what you do next.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Bye now.